Hey guys, it's Max with Max Tech. Today we are comparing the brand new iPhone 11 Pro Max to the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus. We're gonna look at a lot of things such as the design, the feel in the hand. We're gonna compare the screens, the speakers, the CPU performance, the graphics, and find out which one of these is the better device. Let's start out with the actual design of these phones. And looking at the top here, the iPhone definitely looks aged. It's a design that's a couple years old, whereas the Note 10 Plus has these ultra thin bezels. It has this little centered cutout. The glass is curved to the edges, and basing it just from the top, the Note 10 is definitely the clear winner. Now, if we go over to the side, Samsung made a nice design change this year, and the frame is ultra thin. All the buttons are on one side, which does take some time to get used to, but it really makes it feel and look premium. And the back glass is curved all the way up, way more than before. And the iPhone is really rounded and curved all around, but it is the same design. And then if we flip to the back completely, here looking at it, they both look fantastic. Now, Samsung kind of copied Apple's design as far as the camera bump. It is kind of slimmer, doesn't stick out as much, and I thought it was a nice look, and I liked it much better than the renders for the iPhone 11's camera, the little square module. But with that said, once they showed off the final design, and it being a flat piece of glass, all one piece that is etched out, I do like the look of the iPhone better. It looks so much better than what we thought it was gonna be. I wasn't a fan back then, now I am, and I think the iPhone looks better from the back. Now, if we look at the top and the bottom, I really like the flat design. It really stands out compared to the iPhones. And then of course on the bottom, we have USB Type-C for the Note 10 Plus compared to Lightning. I wish the iPhone was USB Type-C. That is definitely, I think, the better way to go. So that is better on the Note 10. Now, along with the exterior design and the hardware comes waterproofing. And this is one area where the iPhone definitely has a heads up. It can actually spend half an hour underwater up to 13 feet deep compared to the Samsung Note 10, which can only do half of that. Now, inside of these cases, we have two large batteries. The iPhone finally has a larger battery, almost at 4,000 milliamp hours, but the Note 10 Plus beats it with 4,300 milliamp hours. Now, the battery is not the only thing that matters. Software optimization and hardware also make a huge difference, and with the new A13 Bionic processor, Apple made some really big improvements. Now, when it comes time to charge, we also have some differences. Thankfully, Apple now finally gives us a fast charger in the box. It's an 18-watt fast charger, whereas the Samsung gives us the charger that's 25 watts. Both are USB Type-C. Now, we also have some differences when it comes time to getting into your device as far as security. The iPhone uses Face ID, the newest version, and which it allows it to be a little bit faster and better angles. So that is very, very easy to get in. It is just so simple, you almost don't even notice that it is there. Now, Samsung took a different approach, and they're using an ultrasonic underneath the display fingerprint scanner. It has gotten better over time, but it still is not as convenient. And with their tablets, they actually use an optical sensor, which is a little bit faster, but they say this one might be a little bit more secure. Either way, I think as far as convenience and security, Face ID does have the upper hand. Now, a lot of people have said that the iPhone is now using the same display tech as the Note 10, but I don't think so looking at these displays. I manually turned up the brightness all the way to compare the brightness, and the iPhone is quite a bit brighter, surprisingly. I went through all the settings, made sure that nothing is turned on that would limit it, and it's actually set to +10 on the Note 10, and it's still quite a bit dimmer. Now, that's even with True Tone turned on with the iPhone, which will adjust the white balance to match your environment, and that typically does lower the brightness a bit. The off-axis brightness. So if you're looking from the side, the iPhone stays brighter and the Note has more brightness shift, and along with that, it also is more reflective. Now, we do have the screen protector on that comes from the factory, and that could be affecting it, but I would guess that most people are gonna keep that screen protector on. Let's finish off with watching a YouTube video. This is a 4K HDR video to push these to the max. The Note 10 Plus right away, right off the bat, because of Android, can play back at 1440p resolution, which definitely makes it nice and sharp, noticeably higher quality. The other two are supposed to have HDR, but one thing that I found right now is that the new iPhone 11 Pro Max has not been updated with HDR support in the YouTube app, which makes this a more difficult comparison, whereas my older iPhone XS Max can play back HDR. Of course, both of these only in 1080p. Now, I'm gonna look at the differences and I will kind of point them out to you a bit, but I do have to mention that when you're watching this back, we're recording not in HDR. You guys are probably watching not in HDR, so just visually, you won't be able to see the same differences that I can. Just as I expected, the Note 10 Plus definitely has a lot more detail when you're watching something back, which is definitely a strong suit. And with the HDR right here, we have better saturated colors, better contrast compared to the no HDR on the 11 Pro. And then the highlights are pulled back a bit. So overall, the experience is better on the Note 10. Of course, we probably will get HDR on the iPhone for the future. Now, what about the audio experience when you're watching a video or listening to music? Let's compare the speakers. All right, guys, wow, that was very interesting. First off, props to Apple for stepping it up once again and starting to match up what Samsung is doing with their S10 and with their Note 10 phones. They were closer than I would expect, but there were some noticeable differences. First off, the iPhone definitely has much sharper, clearer high notes. They really stood out. They definitely changed that from the previous model, whereas the Note 10, it doesn't have that, but the mids are much more distinct. I guess they're louder, you notice them more, but the highs are a little bit more subdued. And along with that, the Note 10 has more deeper notes for the bass. Now, Apple did also talk about their Dolby Atmos tuning, which we did have turned on with the Note, and along with that, their kind of surround sound. So let's test that out. So I'm playing this surround sound test. Of course, our mic is mono, so you won't be able to hear the difference, but take my word for it. So first off, I can definitely hear the surround sound effect, the whizzing by. Now the iPhone, it became more balanced with this generation compared to the Note, which became less balanced. They gave more high frequencies to the bottom speaker, and they made it very balanced as far as loudness. I think that matters for surround sound. I don't feel like a louder side from the bottom speaker. It's more even. When they're zooming by right there, you notice the surround sound effect much more. Yeah, it's almost like it's virtual surround sound, but it feels like they're just coming from the right side or the left side. The iPhone 11 Pro Max is definitely a step ahead. Now it's time for performance. We're gonna run a couple different benchmarks, 3 actually. So let's start out with Geekbench 4, the classic. We're gonna run the CPU test over here. And this is a great time while it's running, while we're waiting, to talk about the specs, or at least the chips. Now the iPhone is definitely gonna be a clear winner with the new A13 Bionic processor, but there are some other differences that matter, and that is RAM to start off with. We have still only 4 gigs of RAM with the iPhone 11 Pro Max. That's one of my big disappointments. I wish it had at least 6, whereas we have 12 gigs with the Note 10 Plus. The results are in for Geekbench 4, and we have about 30% higher multi-core score with the iPhone and almost 60% higher single-core score. And in Geekbench 5, we actually see a bigger difference. The multi-core, just the difference is slightly larger, but in single-core, instead of almost 60%, we are now over 85% higher score with the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Now, I do have to say that the Note 10 Plus is still very capable. It's a great device for the time being. Of course, we haven't looked at graphics yet. We'll take a look at that in just a second. The results are in, and of course, the iPhone is quite a ways ahead, both in the CPU and especially in the graphics. And what my eyes were seeing are now validated. There's a lot more graphics power in the iPhone. Now, does that matter right now in the real world? I think we're gonna have to do a gaming comparison to test that out. So if you guys wanna see a real world gaming comparison with multiple games that are gonna push these to the limits, make sure you guys are subscribed with those notifications enabled. Now, another interesting thing is the memory. The RAM score is actually higher with the iPhone, even though it has less RAM, but the actual speed of the RAM is better. But the ROM score, which is the speed of the storage and the performance of that, is quite a bit higher, more than double with the Note 10, because it does use the new storage chips, whereas the iPhone looks looks like it's still stuck with the older generation. So what about the software? Well, I still have Antutu open and there is a UX score and it's actually identical, 77,000 on both of these, meaning they're both very smooth, very fluid. They have a nice experience. Now, of course, we do have a difference in the actual software, iOS versus Android. They both have their pluses and minuses. A lot of people love iPhones because they can just focus on the tasks they need to do. The software gets out of the way. They don't want to customize. They just want to have it be a good experiences. Apps are optimized, all that good stuff. But on the Android side, you have a lot more customization. It's more powerful. You have a lot more options, and that is definitely a plus. Now, one area where the iPhone definitely leads in software is updates. It's so easy to upgrade to the next version of iOS. It comes out instantly because Apple controls both the hardware and the software, whereas with Samsung, compared to other Android phones, it takes much longer to get updates to newer versions, and they don't support them for as long as iPhones do. You can even have like an iPhone 5S right now and still have the latest version of iOS, whereas Samsung, after a few years, you kind of get left behind. Now, before we get into the cameras, there's one thing I absolutely have to mention, and that is this little guy right here. We have not talked about it. It is the S Pen. And if you're somebody that wants to write notes, you want to draw, you want to have a more accurate pointer and a device to use, that of course you can only get on the Note 10, and that is a major upside of it. Personally, for myself and a lot of other people, we rarely use the S Pen, and for me, it really doesn't matter. So this isn't a significant difference. Now, another thing that some people may really like is DeX. So you can actually connect it to your PC, you can text, you can have photos come over that way. So that's a big plus. Of course, if you have a Mac, you have AirDrop and all of continuity, all of that stuff. But you can also take this phone and plug it into an external display, hook up a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, and be able to use the phone that way as basically kind of like a desktop replacement if you don't want to have a separate computer. Not a lot of people use that, but I have to mention it. And now let's talk about the camera. So the iPhone has finally caught up. We have 3 camera lenses on the back. We have a telephoto, standard or wide, depending how they want to call it, and an ultra wide. Same thing with the Note 10. And on the front, we also have some high quality front-facing cameras. The Note 10 is a 10 megapixel now compared to 12 megapixel, which is an upgrade from 7 with the 11 Pro Max. You guys let me know which one looks better. They both have a wider mode, but one difference is if you want to do a portrait selfie, you don't have access to that wider mode with the iPhone, and you do with the Samsung. Now on the back, the ultra-wides also have a difference. With the iPhone, we have a 13mm equivalent to full frame, and the Note 10s is actually wider. It is also a 16 megapixel ultra-wide compared to 12 megapixel. Apple put a huge focus on the fact that all of these lenses are matched up. 13, 26, 52, and with that, we can actually zoom in and have it be a very nice smooth transition. They're matching these from the factory so that the colors and exposure match up really well. Another thing Apple was really proud of is their new night mode, so they finally caught up and they have that. But there is a couple differences. It goes in automatically. You can't just enable it by default like you can with the Note. And you can only use the night mode on the wide lens and the telephoto. You can't do it on the front facing or the ultra wide, whereas with the Note 10 Plus, you can use it for all of the cameras. Let me know down in the comments section which one of these you think did better from this small sample of images. But of course, we're gonna have to do a lot more testing, and we're gonna make a detailed video covering a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different situations. So make sure you guys are subscribed with notifications enabled so you guys don't miss out on that great video. Now on to the prices. Both of these come in at $1,100, but that doesn't tell the whole story. First off, you can actually get the Note 10 Plus for $1,000 or a little bit less if you search around, and you can also find bundle deals like, for example, you can get the Galaxy Buds included for the same price, which is awesome. We'll leave a link down in the video description. Now, along with that, the Note 10 Plus comes with 256 gigabytes of faster storage built in, and if you want that with the iPhone 11 Pro Max, you gotta spend another $150 more. And we also have a micro SD card tray, so you can add in your own cheap storage as well. So if we look at the whole overall picture, if you are not tied in to the iPhone ecosystem, then I think the Note 10 Plus really has a lot of advantages and for a lower price overall, which makes it kind of the better buy. But of course, if you want iOS, if you want to add it into your collection of iPads, Macs, Apple Watch, stuff like that, then it's still a really good device, and Apple made some really great improvements. So if you guys want to see a couple other videos, we have them right over there. If you guys want to subscribe, that's right up top, enable notifications below, and make sure you guys are subscribed for that photo comparison. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.